Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1058 just came out, and this chapter was a lot of fun to read, and in particular, it actually got me excited for the future of One Piece for a lot of reasons, and has made me pretty optimistic about the direction that the story is going. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. And I have an important question for you. Do you want delicious meals delivered straight to your door? Because with HelloFresh, the sponsor for this video, you can get easily prepared, delicious meals delivered straight to you. So no grocery shopping, no wasted time looking up recipes, and the meals themselves are ready in just 20 minutes. Not to mention, the food is genuinely healthy. You don't have to stick to some boring diet with low-calorie food. You can eat some genuinely good-tasting food from HelloFresh, like sweet and spicy apricot chicken that is also healthy. I know HelloFresh has definitely helped me get in better shape over the last 6 months. On top of that, HelloFresh is just good for the environment. It cuts down food waste by 25% compared to grocery shopping and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So if you're tired of cooking and grocery shopping, if you want to have delicious, healthy meals that require basically zero effort, then get your HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com and use code MrMorge16 to get 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. That's HelloFresh.com, code MrMorge16 to get 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. Link in the description below. So, before we get into exactly why, let me just say that the bounties at the beginning, I think that this was one of the more fun bounty reveal chapters that we've had, particularly because we've got so many gags to work with now in terms of the different bounties. So I think, early on in the story we had the Chopper gag, the Sanji gag, but now we're also adding in Frankie's gag of how he keeps getting bounties like this, and then Usopp's gag of how he keeps getting bounties that are so high. So everyone's got little inside jokes basically going on, running gags basically going on with their bounties at this point. So Nami consistently, well, nothing too crazy about her bounty or anything like that, but she doesn't like it being so high. Usopp, he's always confused and a little scared, but also happy that it's so high. Frankie keeps getting the short end of the stick, which is just such a shame because he actually put in quite a bit of work over the course of Onigashima. I didn't realize that Frankie was going to be set up to take out a Tobiropo solo, and yet he did. And then Sanji, obviously, he can never quite get that, the bounty recognition that he deserves as the third strongest member of the crew. So now even Jinbei is placed above him, even though we can assume that Sanji is above Jinbei in strength. Zoro gets the distinction, obviously continuing of still being the second highest bounty. I'm not going to go through every single person's bounty. I'll just say this. I like to think that the final bounties that the crew will get, that will be the point in time where everybody gets a bounty finally that they can all be happy with, right? So I think that Sanji will get probably the third highest bounty at the end of the story, I like to think. I think Frankie will finally get, a bounty that he can be proud of that's not unreasonably lowballing him. And I think Chopper will finally get a real bounty. It's such a shame that Chopper had this whole moment in Onigashima where he yelled that he is not a Tanuki, and he made everyone kind of recognize him, except for the CP0 guy, who apparently was not paying attention and basically just penciled in again to the world government, Chopper, pet, give him a bounty that's basically like the cost of a gumball. So I'd like to think that at the end of the story, everybody gets a satisfying bounty. One thing that's also pretty interesting is that Mihawk's bounty, we got the bounties of Mihawk, Crocodile, and Buggy. I want to talk a lot about Cross Guild and why that made me, just why it was such a fun read and why it makes me so optimistic for things going forward. But just quickly on the topic of bounties, Mihawk's bounty, look, if you're a Mihawk fan, you are very, very happy with this chapter. Because one, word of, straight from the Marines' mouths, Mihawk is superior to Shanks in terms of sword combat, right? No more discussion about that. In terms of sword-to-sword fighting, Mihawk is going to beat Shanks. Now, if you want to headcanon, which I think is from the stuff we've been seeing recently out of Shanks, is entirely fair to headcanon. Maybe Shanks has some crazy, not sword-related whatsoever, hockey combat. Who knows? Maybe he can shoot energy blasts from his palms. Nobody knows what that man can do with Conqueror's Haki. We just kind of get the sense that it's on a level above the things that we've been seeing so far out of other characters like a Luffy or Kaido. So God knows what Shanks can do, what his full repertoire of hockey abilities are. But in terms of if he's fighting with a sword and Mihawk's fighting with a sword, it sounds like Mihawk is just above him. I think that if you're a Shanks fan, you should be very happy right now. He got insane amounts of hype the last few chapters. He's very possibly the strongest character in the world right now. We don't know. Mihawk is still established firmly to be the strongest in sword combat, which is what Mihawk fans wanted to hear. And the crazy thing is, Mihawk's bounty is 3.59 million berry, which is insane to think about because that's essentially grading him, a man who had no crew, no territory, none of that stuff. It's essentially grading him purely on his individual strength. Now, the fact that he is known as a marine hunter probably gives him that extra added edge to his bounty because that's pretty much going to be what the Marines fear the most, a guy that goes out of his way to hunt down Marines, right? I mean, Kid, we know way back in Sabaody, he got a bit of a bounty boost just because of the fact that he goes after civilians. So what is Mihawk getting as a bit of an extra edge, considering that he actively goes after Marines, which most pirates don't really do? I think as far as we know, Mihawk is probably the only pirate that we know of that will actively go out of his way to hunt down Marines. So that's an interesting bit of information about Mihawk's character. It's fitting with what we know of him, from the past. It's also really interesting that Mihawk was once known as the Marine Hunter, Zoro known as the Pirate Hunter, so those two things eventually obviously coming to clash for World's Strongest Swordsman title. And then on top of that, Mihawk has the second highest bounty in the world right now, which is pretty crazy. Also interesting that the Marines were fine calling Buggy an Emperor, but not giving Buggy a higher bounty than Mihawk. So it's clear that they value a lot of factors go into these things, it looks like, right? So like, even if Mihawk is technically Buggy's subordinate, in the eyes of the Marines, it looks like the Marines can still rate Mihawk, higher as a potential threat than even the boss, Buggy. So, bounties aside, Crocodile also had a big bounty. At this point, everyone's getting really big bounties. I got nothing to say, right? We'll find out how strong Crocodile is right now when we find out, but he's obviously made a big name for himself in the New World. So, all the bounty stuff aside, I love the fact that we got basically a full chapter dedicated to just Cross-Guild. One more thing on bounties before I forget, which is just this. Mihawk's bounty, 3.59 million, right? The same way that I think Luffy's final bounty will be 5.6 billion. 5.6 billion because that's like a little bit higher than Rogers, which is like 5.55. I think Luffy could get 5.56. Or 5.6, which is just like an edge above Rogers. I think we're easily set up for Zoro to possibly get a bounty of 3.6 billion by the end of the story, right? So just an edge above Mihawk's, which is 3.59. It makes sense to me. 3.6 billion, Zoro works in threes, 3.6, that kind of makes sense. We know his 36-pound cannon, obviously 72 and 108 and everything like that. Like, there's just a certain number scheme that Oda seems to like for Zoro. I think 3.6 could be a good ending bounty for Zoro. That stuff aside, Cross-Guild. Cross-Guild was so fun to read about because I think this is one of the few times, normally when Oda big arc ends, we're traveling the world, we're seeing little snippets of everything that's going on, we're catching up on things. It is very, very rare that Oda spends a significant amount of time on an individual scene to really flesh out a full dynamic of what's been going on behind the scenes, right? We'll usually get a scene here or there, but this was a full-fledged chapter just focusing on Cross-Guild, just focusing on what happened with Crocodile, Mihawk, and Buggy, and that is not something that I expected us to get. I expected at most that we get some sort of a quick little monologue from Buggy at some point explaining how he masterminded this whole thing together or something, and like how it worked together brilliantly, maybe like a little quick montage of Mihawk and Crocodile getting some letters from Buggy inviting them. This was the type of stuff I imagined we'd be learning about Cross-Guild maybe in a chapter here or there or something like that, right? But no, Oda really wanted to flesh out the dynamic between these three, and he wanted to flesh out what really happened and kind of how this organization is functioning and how it's going to be functioning in the future. I really like that because it's showing that Oda is fine, even though he's trying to pick up the pace with telling the story. He's fine taking time to really flesh out the things that we're pretty interested in, and it seems like it does set up stuff like Cross-Guild to be significant in the future. Maybe that's an unfair expectation, but I just think it's interesting that Oda took so much time fleshing out these guys when Cross-Guild could easily have been something just shoved to the side that we know exists and maybe shows up in the story a couple times, but isn't that really major in the grand scheme of things. But instead, if Oda's taking a full chapter for us to really learn about them, kind of like, chapter 904, where we got a full chapter dedicated to just the Revolutionary Army, right? I think that does set up Cross-Guild to maybe be more significant than we may have expected in the past. And the reason that this gets me really excited for the future of the story is just some in conjunction with some of the things that we've been getting, right? So increased focus on the Revolutionary Army between this chapter and a couple chapters ago, with us getting information about Flame Emperor Sabo, and still getting to see the reactions of the revolutionaries with that stuff. Shanks getting more screen time, right? Akainu and the Marines, we're learning a bit more about what's going on behind the scenes and what their motivations are right now. And finally, we're getting a full chapter dedicated to us getting to see the establishing of this huge final fourth empire, which is Cross Guild. So to me, I think that in this final stretch of the story, it seems like pretty much anywhere that we turn to, any organization that's going to be involved from here on out is going to be a fairly interesting organization. And we're finally getting to the juicy parts of the story, right? We're finally getting the parts where, you know, it's not so much learning about, let's say, the random 5 heads of the mafia families from back in Hyogoro's day or some shit like that. Instead, we're learning, you know, we're learning about everywhere that we turn is basically going to be an organization or group of characters that we're actually interested in, that are actually significant players in the world. And the fact that Oda's taking the time to flesh out and focus more on so many of these groups has me really excited for what this final stretch of the series is going to be, because it's going to be a lot of crazy stuff happening pretty much from all corners and from all factions. So in the Cross Guild group itself, what I really liked, obviously, was seeing Crocodile and Mihawk interact, and there's a bit of mutual respect there. And Crocodile's right, they are pretty similar in a lot of ways, right? Mihawk's nowhere near as bad of a person as Crocodile. Let's not forget the type of stuff that Crocodile was doing. But at the same time, it's cool to see Mihawk, yeah, like he's cool with working with those that he respects. And obviously neither of them respect Buggy, but it's interesting to see these two characters respect each other. And these were the 2 Shichibukai that were the first 2 that we were introduced into in the story, right? Mihawk and then Crocodile. So it's like the first 2 characters who gave us the concept of what Shichibukai even were, right? The first 2 characters that were really these crazy strong figures that are way above the guys that Luffy and the rest of the crew had been fighting up till now, right? The guys that kind of established that there's a stronger realm of characters out there. They're the ones that are now actually working together, and they've quit the Shichibukai, and they're actually basically an empire together at this point. And actually, the first 3 Shichibukai that we ever met, even though we didn't know it at the time, because Buggy was also... he also turned out to be Shichibukai. So Buggy, Crocodile, Mihawk, the first 3 Shichibukai that we met, they've all formed their own little team here. And the biggest thing that I really liked is the fact that, look, when it was established that Buggy was an emperor, right? I won't lie, that did initially rub me the wrong way for certain reasons, which is that I felt like, one, we didn't know why he'd become an emperor, so it was fun to speculate. Like, obviously I put out a video and everything talking about, okay, he probably got at least Mihawk to join him. He has more manpower than he seemed to have had beforehand, because the last we saw of Buggy and his fleet, they were just so... Buggy's fleet was so weak as far as we knew, and they were basically done for the last time that we saw them, that to be bluntly told that, oh, they're an empire now, right? To me, it kind of almost took away from the excitement of seeing Luffy become an emperor, because we've seen so much that it took for Luffy to finally become an emperor. We saw it took Blackbeard so much and so many feats and so many crazy exploits and so many world-changing... activities, right? Freeing the Impel Down prisoners, causing Marine Ford, taking down the Whitebeard pirates, and everything like that. We saw it took so much for Blackbeard to be called an emperor. Shanks, we know he has a long storied history, etc. So the idea for me that Buggy's just casually being thrown into this emperor class and that it's just a gag, for me, the gag was not worth, I guess, the idea of diluting the meaning of emperor at this point in the story, because that was just such an exciting concept for me for so long, right? Like Luffy finally becoming a Yonko, what it takes to become a Yonko, right? I valued that, I guess, more than the idea of Buggy just being thrown in there. However, this is why we wait, because as time has gone on, now I love the concept of, Buggy being an emperor, because it's not really Buggy being an emperor. If anything, it's like calling Mihawk an emperor and like Crocodile's first mate or something like that. And then, they've got an armada underneath them, which is composed of Buggy's pirate fleet. They've got Das Bones, they've got all the guys that Crocodile's probably bringing with him. I think it's more so, what I really like out of this is that it fits with what Buggy was up till now, and I think that was the big thing that kind of I didn't enjoy at first with Buggy being called an emperor, which is that Buggy is not smart. Buggy is not smart. He's opportunistic. He seizes opportunities, right? At the right place, at the right time is probably what I would describe Buggy as, but he's not smart. He didn't get to where he is through scheming and like successfully manipulating people, really. Buggy is more so a bumbling idiot that gets very, very, very lucky, and he is just smart enough to be able to take advantage of opportunities when they are presented to him, right? But the idea that Buggy had cleverly orchestrated the formation of this whole empire, Cross Guild, and he's got Mihawk and Crocodile working for him, to me, that was kind of taking the type of gag character that Buggy was and turning him into something greater than he is, which is now he's not just Buggy this idiot, but he's actually this, he's a weak character that's really smart and clever and manipulative and is actually able to get Mihawk and Crocodile working for him, right? It's funny, but it's not quite Buggy's style of humor. If you go back and read Impel Down, Marineford, etc., it's all Buggy kind of messing up or things going wrong, but then working out just right. The gates of Impel Down opening at just the right time that it looks like Buggy was the one who was able to open them, right? Shanks showing up at just the right time to make people think that Buggy is on the same level as Shanks at Marineford. Things like that just keep working out bit by bit for him, but it's never through his own cunning or intelligence, really. He's got a shred of cunning, but the gag is that it's all blind luck. It's an idiot who's getting by on blind luck. And that's what I really, really loved about the way that Cross Guild was actually formed. Who's the actual mastermind behind Cross Guild? It's Crocodile. The guy that we would actually expect to lead a criminal organization like this, because to date, Crocodile had the most effective criminal organization I would say that we've seen. He was the most effective criminal mastermind I would say that we've seen throughout the entire story, and that's including all the guys we've seen since then. I think Baroque works, and how close Crocodile got to actually getting his hands on Pluton, how close he got to actually pulling off his plan, his grand scheme to turn the world on its head. I would say that for his strength level and where he was at what point in the story and the type of guys that were working for him, which were fairly low-level subordinates, Baroque Works was a really, really, really competent and mostly successful organization, and Crocodile had plans on plans on backup plans on backup plans. And so he still, to this day, to me, is the perfect vision of a criminal mastermind, evil mafioso boss figure, basically, in One Piece context. So for him to be the real brain, the real creator of Cross Guild, that feels right to me. That feels like the perfect position for Crocodile in the New World. Buggy's the figurehead, Mihawk's the muscle. It all fits, it all lines up perfectly with what each of their characters kind of represents. So I really love the nuances behind Cross Guild. I love the dynamics between these three. I want to see more of them going forward, but we're probably not going to get to dwell a bunch on Cross Guild. But I do have high hopes that the fact that Oda spent so much time on this chapter, that he may have something juicy lined up for them down the road, because it doesn't seem like he's just treating them as a throwaway side group that is not worth at least fleshing out a little bit. So I really, really love this chapter, and I'm definitely looking forward to all of the juicy stuff we got in this final stretch of One Piece. So if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you all next week.